Imagine, for a moment, stepping back, way back,
Yeah.
to the very dawn of written history.
Right, to a place often called the cradle of civilization.
Exactly. We're talking about ancient Mesopotamia, specifically the land of Sumer. This is where some of humanity's earliest really complex ideas about the universe, its origins, and our place in it first started taking shape.
This foundational stuff.
And today, we are embarking on, well, a deep dive into Sumerian mythology. We're going to focus on three incredibly fascinating figures, and you'll see they're surprisingly relatable.
And
That's An.
oh, yeah.
And Enlil, pronounced Enlil.
Enlil, got it. And Enki.
And Enlil and Enki, the big three.
The big three, that's our focus.
And our mission for this deep dive really is to give you a clear, concise, but also genuinely engaging shortcut to understanding this foundational mythological system.
Yeah, because it can seem pretty dense at first glance. It can, but it's far more than just memorizing ancient names. You'll walk away, hopefully, with some truly surprising facts and a real appreciation for how these stories, which are thousands of years old, still resonate.
Resonate with what, though? Like universal human experiences.
Exactly that. Universal experiences, and you can even see how they influence traditions that came much, much later.
That's precisely it. This isn't just a history lesson about old gods. It's about understanding the very roots of human storytelling itself. The earliest documented forms of religious thought. And like you said, you might even find yourself recognizing certain motifs, certain patterns that have echoed through countless cultures right up to today.
You really do. It's quite striking when you start looking.
So get ready to connect some truly ancient dots. Because what we're about to explore here is, well, it's foundational to so much that followed.
Okay, so to really appreciate the cosmic roles of our big three, An, Enlil, and Enki, we probably need to set the scene first.
Good idea. Where and when are we?
Right. Where are we in space and time? We're talking about the fertile lands of Mesopotamia. That's the region cradled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
Primarily modern-day Iraq, right?
Dominantly, yes.
Yeah.
Modern-day Iraq. This was a land blessed with, well, incredible agricultural abundance, mostly thanks to those rivers.
But there's a catch.
There's always a catch, isn't there? It was also a place of really unpredictable, often devastating floods. And that duality, that blessing and curse from the rivers, deeply shaped their worldview. We'll see that reflected in their gods.
Okay, so that's the where. What about the when?
We're focusing on the Sumerian city-states, places you might have heard of, like Uruk, that's Uruk.
Uruk, yeah, Gilgamesh's city.
Exactly. Or Eridu, Ridu, and Nippur, Nip-Por. These places flourished from roughly 4,000 BCE.
4,000 years before the Common Era. That's staggering.
It really is, all the way up to around 2,000 BCE. So think about that. That's 2 millennia, 2,000 years of continuous, complex civilization.
Wow. Laying down some of the earliest blueprints for human society, for cities, for complex belief systems.
It's an almost unimaginable span of time, and they achieved so much.
So this period is crucial because Sumerian mythology, you're saying, is one of the oldest written mythological systems we know of.
Widely recognized as such, yes. One of the very oldest. Its emergence profoundly influenced everything. Religion, culture, politics, social life for these ancient people.
It wasn't just stories they told around the campfire.
No, not at all. It was the very framework through which they understood existence, how they ordered their society, how they tried to explain the fundamental forces of the world. Their myths were their science, in a way, their philosophy, their sacred history, all rolled into one.
And the way they recorded these incredible stories is just as fascinating. They didn't use papyrus or scrolls, not like the Egyptians later on.
No, they used something much more durable, luckily for us. They etched their myths, their laws, their everyday records onto clay tablets.
Humble clay.
Humble clay, yeah. Using a really sophisticated writing system called cuneiform. It involves pressing wedge-shaped marks into wet clay.
Right, with a stylus, usually a reed.
Exactly. Pressing these wedge shapes in. Then they'd let the clay dry, or sometimes bake it for permanence.
And those baked clay tablets are why we know so much.
That's right. These remarkably enduring clay tablets are our primary window into their world. We've unearthed tens of thousands of them. It's incredible.
Tens of thousands. Wow. And what's on them? Just myths.
Oh, all sorts. Among them, we find key literary texts, like early versions of stories that would eventually evolve into the great Gilgamesh epic.
Okay.
Lots of hymns, prayers, descriptions of rituals. And while the Enuma Elish, the famous Babylonian creation epic, came later,
Right, that's Marduk and Tiamat.
that's the one. Its narrative threads, its whole cosmology, you can see they're undeniably rooted in these earlier Sumerian traditions. It shows a clear line of influence.
So the Babylonians built on what the Sumerians started.
They absolutely did. The survival of these, let's face it, fragile pieces of baked clay carrying such profound human thought across millennia. It really is nothing short of miraculous.
And this influence, it didn't just stop with the Babylonians, did it? It spread further.
Yeah, this is where it gets particularly compelling. Sumerian mythology didn't just vanish, it deeply affected and was absorbed by later Mesopotamian cultures, too.
Like the Akkadians.
And the Assyrians.
Exactly. The Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, they all built upon, adapted, and integrated Sumerian concepts into their own mythologies. Sometimes they just changed the names of the gods but kept their core functions, their stories.
It's like a foundational operating system for spirituality in that whole region.
That's a great way to put it. It really was. And what's truly fascinating is how this influence might have extended even further across vast cultural and temporal divides.
I mean, beyond Mesopotamia.
Yes. We see striking echoes, certain motifs that seem to appear in later monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam.
Okay, that's a big claim. How does that connection work? Well, it raises important questions, doesn't it? How did these ancient narratives weave their way into the fabric of much later belief systems? The most famous example, the clearest one perhaps, is the flood myth.
The Great Flood we mentioned earlier with Enlil.
That's the one. The Sumerian story was reshaped, transformed over time, and you see elements reappear so clearly in the Judeo-Christian narrative of Noah's Ark.
Divine anger, destruction by water, a chosen survivor building a boat.
All the core elements are there. It suggests a cultural transmission, not just of a story, but of a profound idea about divine justice, human failings, resilience, maybe even a covenant between humanity and the divine.
Wow. So these stories endured because they tapped into something fundamental about the human condition.
I think so. They spoke to universal human concerns. That's why exploring these Sumerian myths is so crucial, not just for their own sake, but for understanding the roots of later belief systems, too.
Okay, that sets the stage brilliantly. Now let's unpack the structure of the Sumerian pantheon itself. You said it was massive, right? Hundreds, even thousands of gods.
Oh, yeah. It was a polytheistic system, meaning many gods, and we're talking potentially hundreds, maybe even thousands if you count minor local deities, all organized in a pretty clear hierarchy.
Like a divine bureaucracy.
Sort of, yeah. Almost like a sprawling celestial government operating up in the heavens.
And each god had a job, a specific domain.
Exactly. Each deity wasn't just a name. They represented different fundamental aspects of the universe and human life. You had gods and goddesses for the sky, the air, fresh water, fertility, war, love, wisdom, law.
Even specific crafts, like pottery or metalworking.
Absolutely. And crucially, most of these powerful gods were associated with specific city-states. They're patrons, essentially.
We mentioned some already. Enki with Eridu, Enlil with Nippur.
Inanna with Uruk. Their presence, their favor, was considered vital to the identity and the prosperity of those cities. The well-being of the city was tied to the well-being of its patron god.
And here's where they start to feel, well, maybe uncomfortably human. You said they were highly anthropomorphic.
Very much so. They possessed distinct human characteristics, emotions, desires.
They got angry, jealous, they fell in love.
All of it. They had conflicts, squabbles, very human-like interactions. It wasn't some serene, detached, divine realm. It was often a complex, sometimes tumultuous, celestial drama playing out above.
A reflection of the human condition itself, maybe.
Quite possibly. That's a key point about their relatability, but also their unpredictability. This human-like nature made them feel closer, perhaps, but it also emphasized their immense power over human affairs.
So the Sumerians believed these gods were actively running the universe.
Absolutely. From the rising of the sun and the changing seasons to the flooding of the rivers and the outcome of battles, human life, in their view, was entirely dependent on divine will.
And sometimes divine whims.
Sometimes divine whims, yes. Survival and prosperity were directly linked to appeasing these powerful and often quite fickle deities.
So what was humanity's role in this divine drama? Just pawns?
Not exactly pawns, but definitely servants. From the Sumerian perspective, Humans were created specifically to serve the gods, to carry out their will, maintain order on Earth, and basically do the hard labor the gods didn't want to do.
So provide for the gods, keep them happy.
Essentially, yes. Keep the cosmic balance, often through tireless labor and unwavering devotion, through rituals and offerings.
And this duty, this service, manifested most clearly in their temples, the ziggurats.
The ziggurats, exactly. These massive stepped pyramid-like structures. They weren't just places of worship, they were literally seen as the gods' earthly residences, their houses within the city.
Wow, so a direct link between heaven and earth.
That was the idea. They served as pivotal religious, economic, and administrative centers. Imagine them not just as churches, but as the central hub of the city-state.
So grain storage, record-keeping, trade administration.
All happening there, under the gods' purview. Their sheer scale, their prominence in every Sumerian city. It's a testament to how central the gods were to daily life. Everything revolved around the temple.
Okay. And at the very top of this huge pantheon, this divine hierarchy, stood the great gods.
The great gods, yes. And this is where we meet our primary focus for today. The trio of An, Enlil, and Enki.
These three wielded the ultimate authority.
They did, over the other deities, and they were ultimately responsible for maintaining cosmic order itself. They were kind of the executive committee of the divine government.
Got it. But while we're focusing on them, it's worth remembering there were other big players too, right?
Oh, absolutely. We shouldn't forget them entirely. We'll touch on some others, like Inanna. She's incredibly important, the goddess of love and war.
Utu, the sun god. Nano, the moon god.
Exactly. And Ninhursag, the great mother goddess. Each played a vital role in their own domains and within the whole complex web of Sumerian belief.
But An, Enlil, and Enki really formed the core leadership. They shaped the cosmic narrative.
Precisely. They are central to understanding the whole system.
Okay, so we have the context. Let's zoom in. Let's start at the top with An, or Anu, as he was sometimes called later.
Yes, An, or Anu, in Akkadian and Babylonian traditions. He was, without question, the supreme deity in the Sumerian pantheon, the original father figure, you could say.
And his name means sky.
Literally sky or above in Sumerian. He embodied the vault of the heavens, the cosmic expanse. He represented the ultimate source of divine authority and cosmic order. All other gods derived their position from him, fundamentally.
But what's striking, you mentioned earlier, is that despite being number one, he seems kind of distant, passive.
That's right. It's one of his defining characteristics in the myths. Unlike many supreme deities in other cultures who are very active creators or constantly intervening, and rarely got his hands dirty, so to speak.
He didn't meddle in daily affairs much.
Not often. He preferred to delegate authority, or, crucially, to approve decisions made by other gods, particularly his son, Enlil.
So more of a final stamp of approval kind of role. What does that tell us about how the Sumerians viewed ultimate power?
That's a fascinating question. It could suggest a few things. Maybe ultimate authority is seen as something so transcendent, so foundational, that direct intervention isn't its main function. Its existence is the order.
So he sanctions
Yeah.
rather than executes.
Exactly. Or maybe it reflects a political reality where earthly kings needed that ultimate divine legitimation from the distant sky god. But the day-to-day ruling, the active part, was more like Enlil.
Interesting. And his distant nature, maybe it mirrors the sky itself. Always there, powerful, but ultimately unreachable.
That's a very plausible interpretation. The sky is this divine, vast, ultimately unattainable realm, a source of authority that's fundamental, but not constantly interfering. He provides the framework, others manage the details.
His main worship center was in Uruk, right? At the Eanna temple.
Yes, the Eanna, the House of Sky, a huge, grand temple complex befitting his status. And visually, he was often depicted wearing a crown, usually a horned headdress.
Symbolizing his divine authority.
Powerfully symbolizing it, yes. Horns were a common marker of divinity in Mesopotamia.
And worshiping him was crucial for kings, for legitimacy.
Hugely important. Sumerian kings absolutely sought the blessing of An. They often styled themselves as his earthly representatives. It tied their rule directly to the cosmic order and represented, giving it sacred weight.
To rule was to have An's backing.
Essentially, yes. In terms of the myths, An was there right at the beginning, integral to creation.
Part of the first generation of gods.
One of the very first, born from the primeval chaos, which was personified as Namu, the primordial sea or ocean, and the sky, then united with his consort Ki, the earth.
Sky and earth, heaven and
Yes.
earth.
Together, they gave birth to the other gods, establishing the fundamental cosmic order by separating heaven from earth. That separation was a key creation event.
And then, crucially, he delegates.
Yes, that delegation of practical leadership is key. Even though An was supreme, he largely handed over the active governance of the universe to his son, Enlil.
So An remains the revered, symbolic authority, the ultimate seal of approval.
But the day-to-day, hands-on leadership, the dynamic shaping of the world, that shifted to Enlil. Understanding that dynamic is really central.
And Anna is also connected to Inanna as her father.
He's often identified as her father, yes. Inanna, the protective goddess of An's city, Uruk. And there's that famous story where Inanna steals the sacred Mies.
We need to talk more about these Mies, divine rules, powers.
We will, they're fascinating. But in that story, Inanna brings them to Uruk, and An plays this interesting, nuanced role. He doesn't actively stop her, maybe indirectly permits it.
Which again highlights his detached nature, almost letting events unfold.
It seems that way. As if his authority is so absolute, he knows the cosmic order will ultimately hold, even with these divine shenanigans going on. He sets the stage, provides the ultimate authority.
But the active hand belongs more to his son, Enlil, the lord of air and destiny.
Exactly. So let's turn to him. From the majestic distance of An, we move to the dynamic power of Enlil.
Enlil, okay, so he's one of the most active, most powerful gods.
Without a doubt. His name, Lord of Air, really captures his domain. He's associated with storms, wind, the atmosphere. But he's much more than just a weather god.
He's the leader of the gods' assembly, makes the big decisions.
Yes, he presided over the divine council. He was seen as the one responsible for making the crucial decisions that shaped fate, both for humanity and the natural world. And unlike his father, An, Enlil was highly interventionist.
He got involved.
Directly, very directly, impacting the world with his immense power. His main temple was the Akur, the mountain house, in Nippur.
And Nippur became the religious capital.
It really did. The Akur gained immense renown. Nippur was seen as the sacred center among the Sumerian city-states. People made pilgrimages there. It was the place for divine decrees, major rituals.
And Enlil himself had this dual nature, revered but also feared.
Profoundly dual. He controlled the life-giving rains that were essential for agriculture in the Fertile Crescent. He brought abundance. But he could also unleash destructive floods, furious storms. When angered, his power was terrifying.
So creation and destruction rolled into one, nurturing life, but also taking it away mercilessly.
Exactly. And that raises the question, how did the Sumerians reconcile that? How did they worship a god who could be both so benevolent and so terrifying?
Maybe it reflected their own reality, living by those unpredictable rivers.
I think that's absolutely key. Their existence was perpetually tied to the Tigris and Euphrates, life-giving waters, but also sudden catastrophic floods. And Lil, as the embodiment of these unpredictable natural forces, was a divine mirror of their world.
So his duality wasn't a contradiction to them. It was just reality.
It seems it was a comprehensive reflection of their environment. Worshipping him meant acknowledging both the incredible bounty and the potential terror of existence. It fostered a deep sense of dependence, a constant need for appeasement.
Their prayers must have often been pleas for mercy.
Very often, reflecting their understanding that his benevolence was conditional, perhaps even capricious at times.
And politically, his blessing was crucial for kings, too.
Just like Anne's, yes, supreme authority. Kings actively sought Enlil's approval to legitimize their rule. His blessing was paramount.
And we can feel his power in the text they left behind.
Oh, absolutely. The hymns and prayers dedicated to Enlil really highlight this complex nature, sometimes appealing for mercy, other times expressing sheer terror of his wrath.
You mentioned a line from a tablet.
Yes, something like, O Enlil, whose command reaches to the distant heavens, whose storm shakes the world, who determines fate with your unwavering decisions.
Wow. Shakes the world with your storm. That really paints a picture of raw, untamed power.
It really does. A power that could bring prosperity or utter devastation. Now, in terms of myths, Enlil also pops up in the creation of humanity's story.
He was involved in that, too.
In some versions, yes. When the gods decided they needed servants to do the hard labor on Earth.
Taking over the jobs that gods found too tiresome.
Pretty much. Enlil supported the idea of creating humans from clay. He collaborated with Enki on that project.
Okay, but that collaboration didn't last, did it? Because Enlil gets seriously annoyed with humanity later.
That's the big one, the Great Flood story. As humanity multiplied, Enlil became increasingly irritated by their noise, their chaos.
They were too loud, disturbing his divine nap.
Essentially, yes. He found them disruptive. So, in a fit of divine frustration, maybe a desire to restore quiet and order, he decided to wipe them out. All of them. With a massive flood.
And this Sumerian flood myth is the precursor to Noah's Ark.
It's widely seen as exactly that, a direct precursor. It predates the biblical version significantly. The core elements are strikingly similar. A god angered by humanity, a decision to destroy them with water, a chosen individual warned to build a boat.
The parallels are undeniable.
They really are. It's one of the clearest examples of how these Sumerian ideas traveled and were adapted over millennia, though the Sumerian version often highlights the god's capriciousness maybe a bit more overtly.
Interesting. Now, Enlil was also the guardian of the Ms, these divine laws or decrees.
Yes, the maze. These are fascinating. Think of them as the fundamental principles, the divine blueprints for civilization and cosmic order.
So not just rules like don't kill, but more foundational.
Much more foundational and comprehensive. They encompassed everything from abstract concepts like truth, justice, kingship, heroism, to very concrete institutions and skills.
Like what? Give us some surprising examples.
Okay, well, alongside things like wisdom and holy purification rites, the lists of Ms also included things like scribal art, metalworking, building, shepherdship, even prostitution, and the kindling of strife.
Wow. Prostitution and strife as divinely ordained concepts.
It suggests the Ms represented all established aspects of Sumerian civilization, the good, the bad, the complex. They were the divine essences that made society function in all its facets. And Lil, as a key guardian, held these critical pieces of the cosmic puzzle.
And other gods sometimes tried to get them, like Inanna.
Exactly. The stories of gods, especially Inanna, trying to acquire these Ms from Enlil or Enki, highlight power struggles, divine dynamics, maybe even rivalries between the cities associated with those gods. The Ms were symbols of power and legitimacy.
Okay, that clarifies the Ms a lot.
Yeah.
So from the powerful, sometimes terrifying Enlil, who holds destiny and guards these fundamental principles. Let's move to the third major figure, Enki.
Enki, also known as Ea in Akkadian, the wise god of water, creation, and craft.
He sounds different, more positive.
He really is one of the most fascinating, and I'd argue generally the most benevolent figures in the pantheon. He's the intellectual deity, god of wisdom, magic, freshwater, and creation.
His name means Lord of Earth or Lord of Water.
Both interpretations exist. Lord of Earth, or Lord of the Below, perhaps referring to the underground freshwaters, the Apsu. He was deeply associated with rivers, springs, and that subterranean freshwater ocean they believed flowed beneath the earth.
The source of life-giving water.
Precisely. His main temple, the Iabzu House of Waters, was in Eridu, which is considered one of the oldest cities in Sumer, perhaps the world. Very sacred.
And what makes Enki so compelling is his character. Wise and cunning.
Consistently portrayed that way. He's the problem solver, the clever strategist for the gods, often depicted as profoundly benevolent, especially towards humanity.
He gave humans knowledge, technology.
Yes, he's credited with bestowing essential knowledge, arts, crafts, the secrets of civilization upon humanity. And crucially, he often acted as an intermediary, a protector, especially for humans.
Showing mercy when other gods like Enlil were harsh.
Frequently. He often displayed a more humane, compassionate disposition, which puts him in sharp contrast with Enlil's often severe judgments. He was seen as humanity's advocate in the divine council.
So his worship must have been linked to progress, innovation.
Absolutely. He symbolized knowledge, technology, fertility. His temple in Eridu was linked to advancements in irrigation, absolutely vital there. Agriculture, crafts. He wasn't just abstract wisdom, he was practical ingenuity.
The patron of cleverness.
You could say that. Rituals associated with him involved magic, purification rites, prayers for fertility. And because of his connection to humanity, his role as benefactor, he was genuinely cherished.
Priests, scribes, scholars would have felt a connection.
Definitely. Anyone involved with knowledge, learning, intricate systems, they were considered under his divine patronage, the ultimate divine mentor.
Now, mythologically, he was also key in creating humans.
A pivotal role. One major myth has him, along with his mother Namu, fashioning humans from clay, sometimes mixing it with divine blood or essence to give them life and intellect.
But he didn't just make them and walk away.
No, that's key. He then taught them, imparted essential skills, farming, building cities, writing, governance. He set humanity up to thrive, to manage the world effectively for the gods.
And this protective side really shines during the Great Flood story.
It's his defining moment in many ways. While Enlil wants annihilation, Enki vehemently opposes it. He can't directly defy the council's decision, but he finds a way around it.
He warns the human survivor, Zusudra.
Yes, the Sumerian Noah figure. Enki secretly whispers instructions to him, traditionally through a reed wall, telling him to build a large boat to save his family and pairs of animals.
An act of compassion, but also cunning. He didn't break the rule, but he bent it.
Exactly. It highlights this divine conflict, Enki's commitment to humanity's survival. He champions our cause when other gods might give up. It makes him a really nuanced, caring figure, a vital counterpoint.
And the Mies come back into play with Enki, too. He was their main guardian.
He was considered the primary guardian, yes. They were housed in his city, Eridu. But then comes that famous myth with Inanna.
She tricks him, gets him drunk.
She does. Visits him in Eridu, they have a banquet, she plies him with beer, and while he's intoxicated, she persuades him to give her the Mies. Then she loads them onto her boat of heaven and sails back to Uruk.
He must have been furious when he sobered up.
Oh, he was. The text says he sent monstrous creatures after her boat to retrieve them, but Inanna, being resourceful herself, fought them off.
And Enki just let her keep him.
Ultimately, yes. This is what shows his complexity and wisdom. He recognized her cunning, her determination. He accepted the new reality and declared that the Mies would now belong to Uruk.
So, flexible, conciliatory, not rigidly holding on to power.
It suggests an adaptable wisdom. He prioritized the new order, acknowledged the shift in power dynamics, maybe realizing Uruk was becoming the dominant city. He could adapt, unlike maybe Enlil.
Okay, one more Enki story. The Adapa myth about wisdom and immortality.
Right, the Adapa myth. It really shows Enki's role in giving wisdom but also setting limits. Enki created this exceptionally wise human, Adapa, gave him profound wisdom but specifically not eternal life.
And Adapa messes up somehow, breaks the wing of the south wind.
Accidentally, yes. This transgression requires him to go up to heaven to face On. Enki, being the strategist, advises Adapa beforehand. He tells him, don't eat the food they offer you, don't drink the water. It will be the food of death, the water of death.
Okay, sounds like good advice. Well, and the sky god is actually impressed by Adapa's wisdom. So impressed, he decides to offer him immortality, the actual bread of life and water of life.
But Adapa refuses because of Enki's warning.
Exactly. He follows Enki's misleading advice and misses his chance at becoming immortal.
Wow. So Enki gives wisdom, but also keeps humanity mortal, sets boundaries.
Precisely. It illustrates Enki's complex role. He empowers humanity with knowledge, makes them capable, but also subtly ensures they don't cross that ultimate divine boundary. He maintains the distinction between gods and mortals, a very subtle, powerful story about limits.
Okay, so that's our big three. And the distant ultimate authority, Enlil, the powerful, active, sometimes wrathful enforcer of destiny, and Enki, the wise, cunning, often benevolent creator and protector.
A fantastic summary. But as we said, the pantheon was much bigger. We should probably quickly mention a few other key players.
Definitely. Like Inanna. You've mentioned her a few times.
Inanna, yes. Known as Ishtar later on. Hugely important.
Yeah.
Goddess of love, beauty, sexuality, but also war and political power. Incredible duality. Protective deity of Uruk.
Yes. Embodied both creative and destructive forces. Passionate, ambitious, fierce. Her famous myth, the descent to the underworld, is incredibly rich.
Exploring death and rebirth.
Profound themes of death, rebirth, sacrifice, the cycle of seasons. It's a foundational story about confronting mortality and returning.
Okay, who else? Ninhursag.
Ninhursag, yes. Sometimes identified with Ki, the earth. She's the great mother goddess, goddess of fertility, childbirth, mountains, deeply connected to the earth itself.
She helped Enki create humans.
Played a key role alongside Enki in molding humans from clay, providing that life-giving, nurturing element. The divine midwife, in a sense.
Then the celestial bodies. Nana, the moon god.
Nana, or Sin in Akkadian, the moon god, protector of the great city of Ur. His domain was the moon's cycles, crucial for measuring time, agriculture, festivals, often seen as serene, wise, illuminating the night.
And his son, Utu, the sun god.
Utu, or Shamash in Akkadian. Sun god, but also the steadfast guardian of justice and truth, worshipped especially in Larsa and Sipar.
So light revealing truth.
Exactly. He was seen as the bringer of truth, shining light on hidden things, overseeing oaths, treaties, legal judgments, the enforcer of fairness and justice in the world, punished wrongdoing.
So A really diverse cast of characters beyond the main trio, each vital to their worldview.
Absolutely. A rich and complex divine tapestry.
Now, understanding these gods means understanding their whole cultural context, right? Their
Yeah.
cosmology, how they saw the universe.
Definitely. You can't separate the myths from their worldview. The Sumerians generally pictured the universe as having three main layers.
Sky, earth, underworld.
Basically, yes. The sky above and where the celestial gods dwelled, the earth, Ki, where humanity lived, and beneath the earth, the mysterious underworld, Kur.
The realm of the dead.
The realm of the dead, yes, ruled by figures like Ereshkigal, Inanna's sister, a gloomy, shadowy place in most descriptions.
And the gods were actively managing this whole system.
That was the belief. They managed cosmic order, and humanity's purpose, as we discussed, was to serve them, keep the system running through work and worship.
It was like a cosmic contract. Service for order.
A good way to put it, their creation myths often emphasize that shift from a primordial, watery chaos to an ordered universe separated into distinct realms. That reflects a deep desire for structure and stability in what could be a very chaotic world.
And the temples, the ziggurats, were the physical manifestation of this connection.
Absolutely central. As we said, more than just places of worship, they were the gods' literal homes on earth. Points of connection between the human and divine realms. The higher they built them, the closer they felt to the gods.
And the priests inside had crucial jobs.
Vital roles, conducting elaborate rituals, offering sacrifices, food, drink, incense to nourish and appease the gods, chanting hymns of praise or lament.
In trying to figure out the god's will. Divination.
Yes, seeking divine will through various forms of divination, interpreting dreams, reading omens in animal entrails or the stars, trying to understand what the gods wanted or what the future held.
And a major temple like Enlil's Acre in Nippur wasn't just religious, but political too.
Hugely so. It acted as a unifying center. Pilgrimages to Nippur from different city-states fostered a sense of shared identity, all under the authority of Enlil. It was a major religious and political hub.
The legacy of all this, it's immense, isn't it? It didn't just die out with Sumer.
Not at all. Its legacy is vast. As we touched upon, Sumerian mythology was the bedrock for later Mesopotamian cultures. Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian mythology is all heavily borrowed from and built upon Sumerian foundations.
Like the Enuma Elish creation story.
The Enuma Elish is a perfect example. It describes the rise of the Babylonian god Marduk, his battle with the chaotic Tiamat. But the structure, the themes, the cosmology, it clearly draws heavily on earlier Sumerian narratives about creation and divine conflict. It's an adaptation, a reinterpretation for a new political reality, but the roots are Sumerian.
And then the echoes beyond Mesopotamia, the flood story being the prime example influencing Abrahamic faiths.
It's the clearest, most direct link, yes. The core narrative framework, divine anger, destruction by flood, chosen survivor travels across millennia and cultural boundaries, fundamentally shaping later beliefs about divine justice, human sin, covenant. It's remarkable.
And other themes too, like Inanna's descent.
Universal themes resonated elsewhere too. In Anna's journey to the underworld, dealing with death, sacrifice, rebirth, the cycle of life, you find strong parallels in later mythologies.
Like Persephone in Greek myth, Osiris in Egypt.
Exactly. It suggests a widespread cross-cultural exploration of these profound human experiences and existential questions. The Sumerians were among the first to articulate these struggles in detailed narrative form. They were grappling with life's biggest questions.
And the only reason we know any of this is because of those clay tablets found by archaeologists.
Entirely. Our understanding comes directly from the tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets dug up from sites across Iraq. Cities like Nineveh, Nippur, Uruk, often found in temple archives or scribal schools.
Sometimes just fragments.
Often just fragments, yeah. Sometimes nearly complete texts. But they contain the accounts of the gods, the hymns, the rituals, the omens. It's painstaking work to piece them together and translate them.
But it's thanks to that work and the durability of beat clay that stories like Gilgamesh or the myths of Enki and Inanna have survived.
They've literally reached us across millennia. Each tablet is a small window into the minds and beliefs of a civilization so ancient, so removed from our own time. It's truly incredible.
So let's bring it back to the present. Why does Sumer still matter today? Why should we, care about An and Lil Enki?
Well, partly because these myths, they weren't just fanciful stories. They were profound attempts to explain the inexplicable, to find meaning in a chaotic world.
Dealing with floods, death, the power of nature.
Exactly. They represent humanity's earliest documented efforts to really understand the world, its creation, and our own place within that cosmic order. They're the beginnings of philosophy, theology, science, all wrapped up in narrative.
Showing how humans have always tried to make sense of reality.
From the very beginning, they reveal the foundations of how we grapple with those universal questions that we still ponder today: justice, mercy, power, mortality, our relationship with the environment, and the divine.
And maybe most importantly, they provide this blueprint, showing how later religious and mythological systems developed.
I think that's crucial. It shows clear lines of influence and adaptation. It reminds us that ideas, stories, fundamental beliefs, they don't just appear fully formed. They evolve. They're borrowed, reshaped, reinterpreted across cultures and time.
Our own stories, our own beliefs, have these incredibly deep, ancient roots.
They absolutely do, whether we realize it or not.
Okay, so to recap, we've journeyed deep into Sumerian mythology. We've met An, the majestic but distant sky god, the ultimate authority, and Lil, the powerful, dynamic, sometimes fearsome lord of air and destiny, the active governor,
Right.
and Enki, the wise, merciful, cunning god of water, creation, and innovation, often humanity's advocate.
The big three, each with a distinct and vital role.
And these figures, plus others like the vibrant Inanna, didn't just populate a pantheon. They actively shaped the fabric of Sumerian society, religion, politics, their whole understanding of the cosmos.
They were absolutely central to Sumerian life and thought.
So this deep dive really reveals that Sumerian mythology isn't just a dusty collection of ancient tales. It's a foundational pillar of human history. Its influence on cultures and religions that followed is profound.
Undeniable.
So the final thought for you, listening. What does this all mean for us now, thousands of years later? Perhaps these ancient stories, with gods wrestling with power, justice, mercy, the fate of humanity, maybe they reflect timeless human concerns we're still wrestling with.
It certainly seems plausible. The echoes are there if you listen.
So the question to ponder is, what echoes of these Sumerian narratives, these earliest recorded attempts to explain the world and our role in it, what echoes do you still see or hear in the stories, the beliefs, maybe even the societal structures of our world today?